Hello and welcome to the Endless Possibilities podcast. I'm Eva and I'm here today with my co-host Gareth. Hi Gareth.
Hello Eva, how are you?
Hello, I'm very good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm on vacation in Spain at the moment.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
How's the weather?
It's very warm. It's very warm. I have an air conditioning unit running, so I hope it's not making any interference in the video.
Oh, no, I don't hear it, so it should be fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So today's podcast will be all about Gareth. So I'm interviewing Gareth about his spiritual journey and how he became a spiritual teacher and guide for so many people all over the world. So Gareth has helped hundreds of people all over the world to awaken consciousness, to experience life in a higher level of consciousness, and also to activate and awaken their Kundalini. And and you have also created the true spiritual awakening community over the last few years. So there are Zoom meditations every week where people meet and meditate together. There are retreats, online and offline, in-person retreats all over Europe. And also you have a great YouTube channel with a lot of meditations and great content about spiritual awakening and awakening consciousness and Kundalini and all of that, and also your spiritual journey. And we met because you were my guide on my spiritual path, basically. So I found you and you helped me on my path. And yeah, I'm very grateful that I can do the interview with you today. And we have this podcast because you were such a great help. And yeah. So
thank you, Eva.
And we also became very good friends over this year.
We definitely did. And thank you for making me sound so amazing.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, I really had to say all this, because you are, and you've just achieved so much over the past few years and helped so many people. So, I really had to say this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. And yeah, so I will just start with the first question. And, how did you become interested in spirituality? When did it start? How old were you? And who was Gareth back then? So give us just a rough idea, you just roughly can talk about it, please.
Okay, so Gareth was just a very, very normal individual going about his life, not particularly well in my early 20s. Unhappy with my profession, the work I was doing, realizing that fear was controlling my life, and just noticing and having a deep knowing inside me that I didn't fit in. I just didn't fit in no matter where I was. I always felt like I was an outsider. I always felt like I just didn't belong with groups of people, friends, and I eventually stumbled across a book by Louise Hay called You Can Heal Your Life. And it was a really, really simple. I remember I was going on vacation with a girlfriend that I had at the time. And I was sat on the plane and I was bored. And I was just looking around for something to do. And she said, here, take this, read it and shut up and stop annoying me. So I started to read the book, and I just couldn't believe what I was reading. I was, there was all these different concepts that had been laid out in the book about how our thoughts basically control our lives. The thoughts, basically what we think we become. And there was also stuff like we choose our parents, any illnesses that manifest in our body are because of belief patterns that we have. And I was just baffled. I was just like, wow, is this true? I kept looking at her going, what is this? And she was there.
So this information was totally new to you. So
totally new.
Okay, very
totally new.
Yeah.
So nobody in my family, none of my friends had any of these spiritual beliefs. They weren't religious. So this was just, as far as I was concerned, I was living in an objective reality. We're born, we live a certain life, certain number of years and then we die, and that was it.
Yeah.
And I was convinced that's all that there was. So as I started to read this, all these new ideas and paradigms started coming in, and I was just like, wow, this is just amazing. So I mean, I remember asking her, going, is this true? Is this real? And she said, look, just keep reading and see what happens. See how it changes your life. So I straight away, I started, there was a whole load of exercises in the book, affirmations, inner child work, healing. And I just started putting them all together. Like literally, I would sit there saying affirmations over and over and over again, self-love, forgiveness. And that's pretty much what got me started. Yeah.
Okay, and did it work for you? Like, because I remember reading those books as well, right? And I also really enjoyed the information. And I thought, okay, if that information is in a book, it must be true. Just I don't understand it. But I did the affirmations and stuff, and it didn't really work for me in that kind of way. So how was it for you?
I mean, so some of the things that straight away stood out to me was my confidence. I self-love, to love myself. And I just started working on this. I started saying the affirmations, just having forgiveness to myself, a lot of mirror work, just sitting in front of a mirror, and saying affirmations, writing them down. And I mean, within weeks, I started to notice the difference. I just, old patterns, reactiveness that was in me just started to fall away. Limiting beliefs started to fall away. Limiting beliefs around money, about my profession, they started to change. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. So you actually did healing work on yourself back then.
Oh,
That's a part of the healing journey.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, later on, I didn't do an awful lot of healing work. I did it very much so early on. And then one of the things was that I was just so unhappy. I was working in the construction industry, and I had a business. I was very young, and I had a business with another individual, and a number of employees, and I just hated it. I absolutely hated it. And then I was like, I was reading all these concepts in the book about like how I could manifest my own reality using thoughts, by visualizing what I want, I can bring it into my life. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So part of my spiritual awakening started, and this is back in 2003, 2004. And all of a sudden, my life started to change. More money started coming in. I visualized myself having the perfect business. I manifested the perfect business, which just grew and grew and grew. And I could tell that there was something to these books. I could tell that by using my intent and by using my mind, I could almost influence my reality to how I wanted it to be. But I didn't know how it worked. I had no idea how it worked, just that if I could visualize it, I could manifest it into my reality.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. I mean, that's really cool that you had this experience and that this worked, the manifestation. Yeah, really great. And when was the time when you started to become interested, like more deeply in spirituality, like meditating or spiritual practices, something like that?
So while I was I started reading these books. I remembered, and at the time there was no YouTube. I hardly knew how to use a computer back then, and I remember driving into Dublin city centre and finding, and there was no Amazon. And I drove in and found this big bookstore, and I went into the self-help, and I just was like, okay, I think this is the right place. And I just started looking, and eventually I found loads of books by Louise. She had absolutely, dozens of books. I bought up maybe 4 or 5 of her books. I found other ones that just looked really interesting, took them all home. And I was reading 2 books a week. I would just sit there reading. And while I also picked up a whole load of guided meditations on CD. and I started doing the guided meditations because Louise recommended that you start meditating along with doing all of this work as well. So that was part of it. On the very first listen of one of the guided meditations, I entered Satari. I dissolved. My mind, my thoughts stopped, my body disappeared. I was just pure consciousness floating in the void, just absolutely. And it was only very brief. It was only like maybe 30, 40 seconds. But for the first time ever, I was completely free of the mind. I was just there. I was like, and then all of a sudden the mind came in. It was like, I've done it. I'm free. I'm free of the body. And then it was done. Yeah.
Yeah, but really, really beautiful experience. Very similar to mine. Yes, also with a guided meditation. Yeah, very beautiful. And then you just like, this was the first thing where you thought, okay, now I need to get more of this, probably, right? Or you want to explore it more.
But again, I had no idea how this was working. I was still convinced that we were in an objective reality. Our bodies were finite. They would, eventually die. And I didn't know. I had no idea what happened after afterlife. So I was very, very interested in knowing what happened when I die. Yeah.
Okay.
Because the whole death process, I had fear around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you had that experience of like no mind and no body and everything, you basically didn't really know what happened. You just experienced it to be really, really nice and beautiful.
So it was just an experience that was happening when my thoughts quietened down. I had no idea what had happened. It was just, oh, this is really, really nice. I want to get back to this as often as I can.
Yeah. Great. And what did you do then? Like, what was the first meditation practice? Or I don't know, what's the next thing you picked up so that you got more into this?
I started trying to meditate. I found it very hard to get back to that place. I got on and I think what happens is, like, consciousness gives you that really amazing peak experience on your very first go to really get you interested that you come back. So after I had it, I found it very difficult to get back there. And I'm that type of person that I'll keep at something because I knew I got a taste of it and I was like, wow, okay, there has to be something to this. So I would sit meditating maybe twice a day for 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And really, really struggling with meditation, the mind coming in all the time. And I would just simply count. I would count from 1 to 10, and then from 10 back down to 1, just as a way to keep my mind quiet. It was sort of like my mantra.
Yeah. So you were sitting in silence and just trying to get back there. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, great. So I mean, as you keep saying from the beginning, everything you did, you did fully. Like when you found the books and did the affirmations, and also then trying to meditate, like, you have something you want, and then you were just going for it. So yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
that you have that in you, because this is what really helps you to move forward quickly and to get actually what you want, more or less. Yeah.
So straight away, I was like, okay, these affirmations are working, this healing is working. I even bought myself some hypnosis CDs, and I would lay in bed, listen to the hypnosis, just anything I could do to improve my life, because it wasn't going well. It was from where I was, it was like, I just had this deep knowing that this isn't it. There has to be more to just, this existence of going to the pub and drinking with friends and coming home and working. So there had to be more. And I was convinced that I was going to find it in these books and these meditation. So I would sit, and I had absolutely no idea what was going to come from meditation. I was like, I would sit there and go, okay, something has to happen at some stage while I'm meditating. Maybe it opens up into a new reality. Maybe I'll get a glimpse of something bigger than me. I had no idea. I had no internet. I had no friends. I had nothing.
It's crazy when you think about it. Today is so different. You just go on YouTube, put in what you're looking for, and there are so many videos about it. And back then, just books, right?
Just books.
The times have changed so much.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
I mean, the books didn't give a lot away. You know, all that was recommended was to sit in meditation, you know, twice a day for 20
Yeah.
minutes. There was no, this is what's going to happen. So I intuitively was like, okay, you know, this is what I'll do. I'll keep doing it because I feel something inside is going to happen if I stick to it. The affirmations and the visualizations, they were changing my life. My life was getting better. I was noticing that I was reacting differently to external situations, people. I wasn't reacting the way I normally would. I was becoming calmer. I was attracting better people into my life. Negative people were leaving my life after I would learn lessons. The business that I didn't like just dropped away, and I started up a new business, and my life got better. My life, my external life started to feel really nice. I bought a house, I had a business,
Mm.
and everything just started going really well.
Okay, yeah. So for you, everything that already happened in the beginning phase is basically, because for a lot of people, stuff starts to change and fall away when they're already on the path for a while.
Yeah.
For you, it was already in the beginning. Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah. And what was the next more profound shift or experience, or share about your first more
Okay.
profound experience you had? Yeah,
Okay. So I
spiritual
was,
journey.
so I could definitely see that by me focusing my attention and using affirmation and visualizations, that I was totally changing my life, and there was something to this. I knew it, but I had no idea of anything else. So I knew that there was something to this. There was something greater than me, and I could influence my reality through thought. But I still didn't know anything about afterlife, what would happen if I died. And that's what really got, so basically, after a certain amount of time of manifestation, that's what that got me interested in this.
Mm.
After a certain amount of time of the manifestation, I was like, I kind of hit a brick wall. It was like, right, I've manifested 3 shops. I said I have a house, you know, I have a nice car, but it just sort of like, where's it going now? It just wasn't going any further. So I lost interest in it all for a number of years. For about maybe 3 years, I just stopped meditating, stopped doing all my practice, and just concentrate on my business. And then eventually, YouTube came along, and I remember sitting in the shop some days searching on YouTube, and been really, really interested in the whole topic of um, life after death. I came across a guy called Brian Wise, who wrote the book Many Lives, Many Masters, and that was all about, he was a hypnotherapist, and he would work with clients, and he started to regress them back to try and find where pain was manifesting in their life. And I think he was working with one of the first stories in the book was how he was working with this person who had severe pain in the chest, and they were trying to find where that pain came from, and they were regressing him back through memories in this life. And he said, go back further, go back further, go back further. And then all of a sudden, this guy was on the battlefield in France, and there was a German soldier shoving a bayonet through his chest, and he had regressed into a previous life, and that was where the pain in this life in his chest was coming from. So
Yeah.
I mean, when I came across this story, I was like, wow. I went out, I bought all his books, I started searching all about past life regression, and a couple of days later, a guy came in and he put flyers. He said, can I put these flyers on the desk in the shop? And he was a hypnotherapist. And I said, hey, do you know who Brian Wise is? And he was like, yeah. And I said, have you ever heard of past life regression? And he says, yeah. And I said, do you do it? And he says, yeah. And I said, could you
What?
do it on me? And he said, sure. So we set up a session. I went down to his practice, and I did a 3-hour past life regression with him.
Oh wow,
And
that's long.
yeah. Really, I mean, it was really amazing. He brought me into like maybe 5 past lives through hypnotherapy. Now, I won't get into the details of the lives, but there was still doubt in me. I walked away going, okay, very interesting, but did I just make all that up? There was some really fascinating stuff that I got, the information, but I was like, yeah, maybe I just made it up in my head. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, because it felt very dreamlike. It felt like almost like a interactive daydream. Not a whole lot of detail, but there was, I was getting information. I could see, scenes and scenarios just unfolding in front of my eyes, but I still didn't know if it was my own mind, manifesting them. So I then kept looking on YouTube, I kept searching all about life between lives and previous lives. And then all of a sudden I came across the whole subject of out-of-body experiences. And this little old gentleman called Bob Monroe, and I watched his videos, and he was just the nicest gentleman, he was a Southern American, very, very wealthy businessman who owned radio stations and TV. And he started talking all about how one evening he went to bed and he woke up with vibrations, and he got really, really scared by these vibrations that were in his body, and he thought he was maybe having a tumor in his brain, and he went and he got checked up. All the professionals said that there was nothing wrong with him. So then one evening he lay there with the vibrations in his body. He's like, okay, the vibrations are here. They're not going to kill me. I'm just going to stay with them. And all of a sudden he started to float up out of his body. He then realized, he was like looking at this like glass fountain, and he was like, what am I looking at here? And he's like, what is this? And then all of a sudden he realized that he had floated up to the ceiling, and he was bouncing off the chandelier that was over his bed. And he said, wow, this is the chandelier. And he span around and he looked down, and he could see his wife in the bed. And he said next to his wife was a man. And he was like, who's this man? And he looked closer, and it was him. And then all of a sudden panic set in, and he realized, he thought he was dying. He thought he had left the body and he was dying. So he started trying to get back into his body, got back into his body, and his whole life changed from that moment. This started happening time and time again. Every couple of evenings the vibrations would come, but he was terrified, absolutely terrified. This was in the 50s and the 60s.
Okay, and then you got interested in doing this for yourself as well?
Oh, absolutely. So I straight away, I was like, this is it. This is going to answer all of my questions, because I wanted to know what happened when I died. I just wanted to make sure that, when I die, I'm not just, worm food. I was convinced that this body was just, when it dies, that's it. So I was like, if I can have that experience, I'm going to know that I live on. So I went and I bought all his books on Amazon, and I started practicing. And I mean, I was practicing for about 3 months and nothing was happening. And I also, while I was looking for Bob, I came across another gentleman called Tom Campbell. And Tom actually was one of the explorers. So Bob Monroe went on to create this lab called the Monroe Institute, where he would study consciousness, and he trained a whole load of explorers how to leave their bodies and go out and explore these out-of-body experiences and come back with information. And one of the explorers was called Tom Campbell, and Tom Campbell broke away from Bob, and he went off and studied consciousness. He was a physicist, and he studied consciousness for 35 years. And he came back and he wrote this book called My Big Theory of Everything. And it was basically how everything works, how consciousness works, how our reality works, what our place is in the larger reality. And I went looking for him, and I found he had a website, and I found he had a Facebook, and he had like 14 friends at the time. This is going back maybe 14 years ago. And I'd been sitting there every evening trying to project out of body. Nothing was happening. And I reached out to Tom, sent him a message on Facebook. And I said, hey, Tom, I said, you know, I've been watching some of your videos. I said, you know, I'm Bob Monroe. And I was like, you two guys, like, I believe you. I said, but I said, it's not my experience. I said, I'm reading all about it. And I said, it sounds so amazing. And but I really want to have this experience. I said, how can I do it? I said, can you teach me? Because unless I do it for myself, I said, I'm still going to have doubt. And he was like, well, you know, he wrote back to me next day. I got a message.
Oh,
and he
really?
was
Wow.
really nice. And he typed away and told me, you know, to go on and read the form and, you know, research this section of his book more and meditate a little bit more. And didn't really give me anything, no amazing tips or anything. But 2 nights later, I woke up in bed with vibrations running up and down my body. And I knew, because in all of the books that I've been reading, the prelude to having one of these out-of-body experiences was vibrations that would start in the body, and they would start to go from the toes all the way up to the head and back down, and they'd go up and down and get faster and faster and faster. And it happened exactly how it would in the book for me. And all of a sudden, these vibrations in me just got so loud. They sounded like jet engines in my ears. And then all of a sudden, 2 arms literally just grabbed me from under the arms, pulled me out of my body, and catapulted me through the roof. And I'm flying across all the fields. It's just like the most, and I'm like, I've done it. I'm out of body, and I'm just looking down. I'm flying, and then all of a sudden, I kind of come to an end. And I land in this field, and I'm like, I'm looking around, and I'm looking up at the stars and everything. I look at my hands, and I'm like, I did it. And then all of a sudden, what felt like an big elastic rubber band just snapped me back to my body. And I jumped up out of the bed, and I was like, I did it. And I mean, I couldn't get back to sleep. I
of course.
Yeah, I couldn't get back to sleep. The whole next day I was walking around going, I don't die. If my body dies, I exist beyond the body. And that was it.
Yeah, very, very amazing. To me, it's just so amazing that you were trying this for 3 months and nothing happened, you know, because people usually give up very quickly when stuff is not working, but you were trying and looking for solutions by finding Tom. So that's really amazing. Yeah, and then you didn't die. Great. And then, but you kept on like practicing, right? You did on doing out-of-body experiences and for a while. Right?
Yeah, so all of a sudden, so the next day I wrote to Tom. I said, I did it, Tom, it happened. And he was like, well, you know, he said, just keep going, don't get too excited. And he said, see what happens. But again, not giving me too much information. But then all of a sudden, what started to happen was these experiences would I couldn't turn them off. So it was like 2 or 3 times a night, I would wake up with the vibrations. And I mean, there'd be like wind coming through like when the vibrations would come through the body, all of a sudden you're open to that world. And it was like wind would come in, glass would be breaking, there'd be people calling my name. And I'd be like, and there would be this sense of like, oh, what's out there? What's, you know, there's other beings. And I would start the vibrations would come, and all of a sudden the way I would separate from my body I would imagine I was rolling, and I would roll off the side of the bed and separate. And then all of a sudden, as soon as I'd get away from the body, I would just think of a place, and either I would just go there, or I could walk through walls, or I could fly. So so they started happening, and I couldn't turn them off. Sometimes I'd go out of body 3 or 4 times a night. Then they might just disappear for a night or 2, then they'd come back. And this went on for about a year or 2.
Oh, wow.
It was going on.
That's
all the
long.
time. Oh, I mean, I had some amazing experiences.
What did you do for 1 or 2 years in those around?
I mean, if
do you want to share just one or two experiences, maybe that would be interesting for everybody
to
yeah
okay. So I met other beings spirits who had passed on. I remember one evening, one night, rolling off the side of the bed and falling through the ceiling and landing in my sitting room. And I remember being stood at the doorway, and on the floor of my sitting room, there was two teenage girls, about 12, 13, in pajamas, sat on the floor with cushions on their laps, like they were talking to one another. And I stood there, and then the two of them turned around and noticed me, and they screamed. They got scared of me, and the two of them ran through the wall. And I remember going, wow, that was so weird. And I remember moving over. There was a mirror over the fireplace, and I looked at myself in the out-of-body state at the mirror, and I was just made of like water. It was like I was completely transparent. I looked like a ghost.
Really?
So I think so the girls were obviously spirits. They were they had died. They were humans, and they were still hanging around, and they could see me in this out-of-body state, and I had scared them.
Yeah. Oh wow! And you could see yourself in the mirror, but
I could see myself.
Okay.
I could see myself. I mean, the when you're in that state, it's so real. It's like somebody hands you a remote control, and it's got a high definition button, and you click it, and everything just becomes so HD. It's like the flowers. I remember I'm actually in Spain in my parents' house at the moment, and I remember one evening going, oh, let's go to my parents' house in Spain. And straight away I was stood outside, and they have these bushes at the front of the house, and they have these white and pink flowers on them. And I remember they were like all sort of like glowing, and there was sort of like this energy connecting all of them. I remember going, wow, everything looks so amazing. And I remember another evening, like in the rain, moving around in the rain and feeling the droplets of the rain passing through my body. They literally, like, I could feel them going through and exiting the other side of my body. So that was going on. I would get out of body. I could do whatever I wanted. I could go to places, and then there were certain places I couldn't go to. I would get this almost like when I would try and go to certain places where I wasn't allowed to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question. So when you in these outer body states, is it like a movie where you just see things, or do you experience it as well, like, emotional in that kind of ways? How is the experience of it?
So it feels so you can go in the out-of-body state in a number of ways. You can travel almost as a disembodied consciousness. So I used to be able to do that as well, where my consciousness would just become aware in different reality frames, and I could almost just observe everything as an observer. But then I could also go with a body, like an astral body, and it would be a complete copy of this. I had hands, I could move, I could walk through walls, and it was really, really real. It was so real. It was more real than this reality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I had 2 out-of-body experiences, but just after a jet lag, or while I was having a jet lag, and I was flying over the area where I lived, and it was very beautiful. And I thought, oh, I can fly. It's real, So I have to tell my boyfriend. That's what I thought. Yeah. So I hardly remember it, so long ago, but I think it's so fascinating. Yeah. Really cool. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that's so cool. Great. And then what's the next more profound experience where you say, okay, this is you were more open or more interested in spirituality, in starting to meditate and do spiritual practices? So what's the next phase? Yeah,
so I continued meditating religiously. I would sit in meditation every day, twice a day, sometimes for an hour twice a day, and that stayed with me, even though I eventually lost interest in the out-of-body thing, and it just closed down. I stopped doing it closed down, and that went away. But I was still being very much taught in the dream reality. So every evening I would go into dream into dreams, and I was being taught almost like in a classroom. And one of the teachers that I was lucky enough to have in this state was Tom Campbell. So I would have these really fascinating conversations with Tom, where we'd be eating salad, at a restaurant, and it was like as if I was sat in front of the real Tom, and he'd be telling me things, we'd be talking about different things, and this was happening all the time.
This is lucid dreaming, right?
I was lucid dreaming.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really Tom. It was, If I had gone and said to Tom, "Hey Tom, is that you teaching me in these classrooms?" He'd have said, "No, it's the larger consciousness system using the form of Tom to teach me." Because I looked up to him so much. And this stayed like with you when you woke up from, like, in the morning. This stayed with you. I would have all these different lessons that would happen, and I think we spoke last time about the lesson where I picked up the calf that had gotten out of the field. This was the sort of situations. Another big one was the whole death process. They allowed me to go through the death process. They told me, and when I say it was just an intelligence that would come, and it was like, okay, you have a fear of death. Tonight we're going to go through what it feels like to die. And they would say, "Are you ready?" And I'd say, "Okay." And then they'd be like, "Okay, let's move." And all of a sudden it would be like my consciousness was just kind of phase into a different state. And they're like, that's it. You've moved from the living state into the death state. And then they'd be, "Okay, so we're going to go back." And then I would feel the shift again. And we've done this a number of times. And they're like, "Okay, is that a big deal?" I was like, "No." And they'd be like, "Okay, done. The lesson has been learned." And it was like the fear of dying was being, removed by just slowly letting me feel what it was like coming back into my body, back into the death phase. But
that was your goal, right? So that was basically your goal, and that's what you got.
Yes. It was
nice.
To remove the fear. So I knew early on that it was the fear. I had fear in my system. Fear was holding me back. Fear was controlling my life, and that I had to remove the fear. And a lot of it was being worked on in these dream states.
Okay.
A lot of lessons.
Okay, very interesting. And when you said you were meditating every day, so it was just sitting by yourself in silence, right? Okay. And when was the time? I don't know if there is a lot in between that, but when was the time when you started to get interested in transmissions and in all of, like, the Shaktipaths and that kind of?
Okay, so I didn't have an interest. So it was like I got to a certain stage with these lessons, and then I had an illness, and I had this really, really strange illness come out of nowhere and put me in bed for, I don't know, like a year and a half. It had been going on for a long time, but put me in bed for about a year and a half. Couldn't work. I had to work remotely. I had to run my business from my laptop at home, and couldn't meditate, couldn't do any spiritual practice because all my body, all the energy was focused on healing. Eventually got over this illness, and when I did get back to trying to meditate, I couldn't. It was like I had gone back like 10 years. What felt like, my ego had gotten really, really small, faint from all the spiritual practice I was doing. And after the illness, I had gotten over the illness. It was like as if my ego came back so much stronger. It didn't want me meditating. It was pulling me away from it. I was like, what is wrong? Why is this happening? I can't meditate anymore. And it was really, really frustrating. And I kind of just kind of gave up a little bit. I was just like, we'll just see what happens. And I think it was 2016, just randomly, I had gotten into a little bit of Eckhart Tolle. I was listening to Eckhart's Practicing the Power of Now, and that was really helping me. Because I was still, even though I was having all these amazing experiences, I was still very much an individual here on this planet with all my problems, all my worries about money, my business. And it just used to really annoy me. So I started listening to Eckhart's audiobooks, practicing the power of now. And I don't know, like about 6 months later, again, not a spiritual seeker. I wasn't seeking anything, just to have, a more peaceful life. I had a spontaneous awakening in the gym one morning.
Oh yeah, this is like one of your most profound experiences on the spiritual path, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I would say the most.
The most, yeah, the most, yeah. So please do share with us, because it's a very beautiful experience.
So for about 2 weeks before the experience, I kept having this feeling that something larger than myself was trying to communicate with me. I had the feeling that I was being watched. I was listening to songs, and I felt like the songs were talking to me. I felt like I was being followed. I'd go into the gym in the morning, and I'd be like, it felt, I don't know if you're familiar with the movie The Truman Show.
No, I'm not. I know it, but I've never watched it.
Yeah. So I felt like I was being watched.
Okay.
And I just had this really, really strange feeling. Every song that came on the radio, it was like as if it was somebody trying to get my attention with the lyrics. And I was like, something really strange is going on. And then one morning I went in, and I remember it was such a beautiful morning. It was like 7 a.m. Sun was coming in the window. And I remember just being stood there, and for some reason on this day, I just stopped. I just thought to myself, wow. I said, the noises that I'm hearing are not outside. I said, they're inside of me. And I said, that's really strange. I said, they're inside me. I'm hearing the noise inside. And then I looked, and the sun was coming in through the window. And I said, and that sun is not external to me. I said, that sun is inside of my consciousness. And I said, everything that's going on is in me. And then all of a sudden, it was like as if Velcro, 2 pieces of Velcro were just pulled apart inside my brain. And I heard it going like this. And then all of a sudden, the only way that I could describe it was God. The universe literally woke up and peered out through my eyes. Now, this is where all of the out-of-body stuff and the lucid dreaming really helped me, because I wouldn't have known, because I'd had lucid dreams before. And a lucid dream is basically when you're dreaming and you realize that you're dreaming. And all of a sudden there's an aha moment in the dream, and you kind of go, oh wow, this is a dream state. And you realize that you're actually in bed and you're dreaming into this dream. You've woke up in the dream. So all of a sudden there was a being that was not in my reality, that was outside of reality, had suddenly woke up in me and started to look out through my eyes. And I knew it was like, oh, I've been dreaming myself into this character. And then all of a sudden my mind started going, my intellect started to try and figure out what was happening. I knew that there was something greater than me that had just woke up. It was looking out through my eyes. And at the same time, there was an understanding, an intellectual understanding coming into the me. And it was like, oh, I am something much greater than this character. This Gareth is a character, a dream character. The whole thing is fictional. It's been a dream. My entire life has been a dream. I knew what I was. I was like, I am this one. There's only one. I knew I was this only one supreme being. So and then all of a sudden, I started to look, and the noise, the music, and I was like, I'm the music. And I was like, I'm the walls, I'm the equipment, I am everything. I am everything. So I'm here, I'm in this body, I've just woke up, I'm looking out, but I'm also what's manifesting this reality. And then I looked at the people, and I'm like, and I'm the people. I am dreaming myself. I've just woke up in this one form, okay? Here I am now fully conscious and lucid in this form, but I'm also the consciousness that's in every single individual that I'm looking at, but I'm still asleep. So I have become lucid in Gareth, but I'm still sleepwalking in all of these individuals in the gym. They're still dreaming themselves into their characters.
Yeah, I mean,
And
that's
yeah, the
so
tears started
amazing.
rolling down my face.
Yeah.
I remember sitting down on the bench. I was just sat there in amazement, just looking around. I think I sat there for maybe 10 minutes. Just my mouth was open. I was just like, wow. And I remember going, I'm done. I picked up my bag, put my bag on, walked out, and I had the most amazing journey into work that morning. And 1 hour in the car, just looking out. Everything was me, the roads, trees, everything was me. And then I got into work, and it felt like the aperture of what just happened had been slowly, as I was driving into work, still felt really amazing, but it had closed down. But I was different. I was now completely different. Something had snapped and it never went back to the way it was.
Yeah, I mean, such a beautiful experience. And yeah, of course, like if you have an opening like that, you can't be the same, right? Like you just have so much more knowledge and understanding of what you are. And how did you know that this was the supreme being? And can you just explain for everybody when you talk about the supreme being, what it is, so that we understand?
So I had no idea what the supreme being was.
Okay.
It was almost like that the knowledge of what the supreme being was revealed to me in that moment.
Okay.
I just knew that there was one, and that it was dreaming itself into everything, and it was what was manifesting the reality, and I was that. And there was no name. It was like it was God, the universe, whatever, it was just, there was something, one supreme being.
Yeah.
But there was no religious, there was no Hindu context, I had nothing. I had no, Krishna, none of these names made sense to me at that time.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and from today's perspective, looking back, what do you think has opened? Like, was it the Brahman, or was it like really just the supreme being? Then how you understand it today, like opening up the one being? So yeah, just looking back,
Okay,
what was it?
so again, the first thing that I did was I started researching. I started trying to find what had happened to me, and I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find anything. So looking back now, I understand that I had woken up, or it had woken up to what's known as God realization. It wasn't self-realization. It wasn't the self that awoke. It was God woke up to the reality of itself. God literally became lucid through my form, looked out through my eyes. All that supreme knowledge was delivered down into my system. And then the aperture closed down, because my nervous system wasn't able to maintain that state. I was now in a permanent state of what's known as self-realization. The self was completely awake to itself. Fear, I mean, from that experience, fear was wiped out. Now, when I say fear, I'm talking about psychological fear. Fear of the future, worry, anxieties, they were all just completely gone. It was just gone. It was just like I just had this sense of like a tight shoe had been taken off my foot. And it was just like, oh my God, everything just feels amazing. I don't have to worry about anything. I know what I am. I know I exist beyond the body. I am everything. And that
So
was it.
like,
I was just completely changed from that moment on. Now, even though I was in that state of self-realization, there was still human stuff going on. It's still ego there. There was still, what we would say samskaras. That was still there. So from that moment on is when my real spiritual work started. From that moment on, that's when I became a spiritual seeker.
okay, yeah. And you researched and couldn't find anything. So what was the next step for you? Because I mean, the YouTube was already there at that time, and I guess like you could search stuff on the internet, so not just books. But yeah, what did you do next?
So I came across Robert Adams, and he was talking about self-realization, and I came across Adi Ashanti, and they were talking about different stages of enlightenment, and I was like, that's exactly what's happened to me. Now, they didn't describe what had happened to me in my awakening, but what had happened, where I was afterwards, they were totally describing it. And they were describing states further on that I hadn't yet experienced. So I was like, okay, I'm definitely there. I'm having experience of that next stage, but I wasn't yet experiencing what they were calling unity consciousness. That wasn't happening for me. So I knew from then that I was on a journey and that there were stages and that I had to make my way along them stages, the journey.
Okay, so you that this was the next goal, to walk along like that path and attain at these levels, or those levels.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I didn't talk to anybody really. I didn't really have any friends who were interested. I had one friend and I spoke to him, and that was it. I was like, what can I say to people? Who's going to believe me? So I had the privilege of running my own business, and I was able to cut my working week down to 2 days a week, where I could just sit at home. And I just really, really enjoyed sitting on the sofa, looking out the window. I wouldn't even have the TV on. Everything just felt really amazing. I never went back to the gym after that day. I was just like, yeah, this is great. I don't need to do anything. Everything just felt amazing. Even there was no striving, but it was like I was now listening to Adi Ashanti, and I was like, wow, okay, there's more to come.
Yeah. So when you say you were sitting on the sofa and you felt so amazing, I've heard this before. So was it because all the low or a lot of the low vibrational emotions just fell away and you were in peace? You felt peace, or what did you feel? Like, what was your experience?
So the human seeking energy just ceased. The striving for more, striving to advance myself, to keep my business advancing, it all just stopped. I was like, didn't care about going to the gym, didn't care about staying in shape. I was like, oh, I don't care about any of that stuff. I'm just happy. I don't care what anyone thinks about me. I had seen that everything was a dream. I was like, okay, yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then what was the next phase? So you were sitting, or you were enjoying that phase for quite a while, I think.
2 years.
2 years, yeah.
2 years.
Yeah, and then was that around the time when you started your meditation group, or was this a bit later?
A little bit later. So for about 2 years, I was just sitting around, just enjoying this freedom, this new state. I was still getting little teachings coming in. I would sit there and go, what's going on? And I remember one day an intelligence started to explain that I was in self-realization. It explained ignorance to me. It then explained what witnessing consciousness was, self-realization. It explained God consciousness, and it said that I was in God consciousness. I was fluctuating between self-realization and God consciousness. And then it told me that there was a further state that was about to develop.
Can I just ask you something about God consciousness? Was this something where you were in like all the time, or was this experiences and you dropped out and in of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was an opening up and a closing down.
Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, when it would open up, it was just amazing. It would feel like I was an alien, that I had just been dropped down onto the planet, and I was looking at everything with new, like, for the first time. So I'd like walk in nature, and I'd be like looking at the trees and how the light would come through the trees, and it was just being displayed for me at that moment. It was like that I would do the same walk every day, and it was like the first time that I'd ever put my feet on the ground. I mean, there'd be days, there'd be tears rolling down my face walking around at the beauty of everything.
Yeah.
And that was going on for like a year, Eva. Yeah, in and out. It would open up, it would close down, and most of the time it would open up when I'd go into nature. Yeah.
So I want to share a bit about that experience I had as well in the God consciousness. It was very similar. I had a few of them just over a period of 2 or 3 months, and it was also in nature and also on my birthday. And I asked, the Divine Mother on my birthday for a birthday gift. And then I woke up already in the morning. I looked outside and I could already see things look different. And then I went for a hike, and I can also describe it like you. Like everything was just so like colorful and bright, and everything looked so amazing, and everything was vibrating. Like it's like, it was just so beautiful. Like I really, really loved it. So such a beautiful state or experience to have. Yes.
Yeah, it's like, if you're trying to explain, you're still looking at the same things everybody else is looking at.
It's the same. Yes.
But it's like everything just has this, it's like an added dimension to it that you just never seen before.
Yeah, it looks sparkly. Everything looks sparkly and beautiful, and you feel so joyful, and you feel like you're in a cloud, basically. So that's very, very.
That was it. That's exactly what it is.
Exactly.
And that's consciousness looking out through your eyes and seeing itself in the outside world, and then the feedback is bliss. When the self realizes what it's witnessing is itself, the feedback is bliss.
Yeah, very beautiful. Okay, so you were in and out of God consciousness, and then you started to become interested in unity consciousness, or to experience unity consciousness, or how was it for you?
not necessarily. I then the topic of Kundalini started to come. Started to pop up. I started to read about it. I had a talk where Adi Ashanti talked about it. I was like, wow, okay. And I was like, started to research it, and I discovered that it could be sped up. The process could be sped up by using spiritual transmissions. So Shaktipat just came up, and I was like, okay, I need to research Shaktipat. So I researched Shaktipat and discovered that there was a gentleman called Jan Esman coming to Dublin. This is back in 2018, I think, and he was doing a 3-day Shaktipat intensive. So I was like, okay, I have to go. So I told my friend about it. He was like, yeah, let's go. Booked in, went. And the day before, actually, I was walking, and all of a sudden a message came in, and it said, this is going to be a game changer.
Okay.
So I was like, well, I'm definitely going. Yeah.
Okay, and then you received Shaktipat for the first time.
Yeah, so I went to this. It was in Dublin city centre. I went. There was this guy sat up the front. There was maybe 25, 30 people in the audience, sat meditating, and he would bring them up and sit next to him, and he would put his hands on their knees and meditate. So I think I was one of the first people to sit next to him. And I remember sitting there receiving Shaktipat. We'd meditate for 15 minutes. I was like, oh, this is a bit strange. This guy has his hand on my leg. And I was like, okay, but let's just do it. So I was meditating. I didn't really feel much. I was like, I sat back down my seat. He asked me how it was, and I was like, out of politeness, I was like, oh yeah, really nice, thank you. I sat back down in my seat, and didn't feel much on the first day. I mean, I could tell there was something. When I closed my eyes, my meditation was deeper. It was, I was like, okay, so, I can definitely sense that my meditation is deeper, but nothing profound on the first day. Second day, I got a little bit triggered by the teacher. And I actually was going to leave halfway through the second day. I was like, oh, this isn't for me. I remember packing my bags and going, nah, just nothing's going to happen. I've just, and then I remember going on lunch and having such an amazing time with the other participants on the lunch, and going, okay, I'll come back. So I went back, and I was delighted that I came back, because on day 3, everything changed. Day 3, I had bliss in my brain. I had Shakti all around my body. I was like, I couldn't even function. At one stage on day 3, I couldn't even sit in the room. It was that intense. I had to, it was in an old Georgian building. And I remember going down into the basement and just sitting by myself on the floor, trying to ground myself. I had so much energy in my system. And And then on the next day, I remember just like getting out of the car, getting electrocuted up by the car. Everything I touch, I was getting shocks. And I had so much, like I had all this strange sensations in my hands. I had bliss in my face. My jaw was going. It felt like I had taken some sort of like chemical. I was intoxicated. And I was just, for the next 3 months, I was in bliss 24/7. I couldn't get over it. I didn't need any more Shaktipat. I was like, whatever I've gotten, I don't need anything else.
Yeah. So your Kundalini got activated, right? Would you say it like that?
No, I would say my Kundalini was already activated.
Okay.
Yeah, from the out of body experiences with the vibrations running down my body.
Okay.
I think going to see Jan was like pouring gasoline on a fire. So I was already in a state of self-realization, in and out of God consciousness. The Shaktipat just ignited everything. Yeah.
So, and it was the first time you actually received the transmission, was it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That I knew about. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. And you right away had such a profound experience. And then you went to like a number of his intensives, right? You went over and over again.
Okay. So about maybe 3 months later, my friend wanted to go again to see him in Sweden, and I was like, no. I said, I don't need to go. I said, I've so much bliss going on. What did happen was Mother Mira came to give darshan, and a friend of mine told me about Mother Mira, and I registered for Mother Mira. I think we discussed it on the. I don't know if I'll get into the story. Will I? We discussed it on one of the last.
Yeah, well, we discussed it. Both went to
so
Mother Mira. You can just briefly,
I had this very profound experience with Mother Mira where I basically received darshan from her in a dream state. And this was just adding to the bliss. This was like the next day after the dream, I went into work. I couldn't function. I had to lock the door. I had to lay on the floor. I was like looking up at the ceiling, laughing to myself. I was just mind-boggling, the bliss. I couldn't function. Couldn't even walk. I had that much going on in my system.
So how does it feel when you have so much like shakti in the system or energy that you can't walk? Like, is it just overwhelming, or you just prefer to lay down before doing anything else, right?
Yeah, but I mean, look, if I needed to, if there was an emergency, of course I could get up and a lot of people get scared about this.
Yeah.
It's not the case. It was just like I couldn't interact with another human. So I was like, I'm just locking the door of the shop because I cannot talk to another person. I lay on the floor and I just laughed. I kept saying to myself, I'm different. Something has happened. I am completely different. And you want to enjoy this experience, right? It's just something you want to like totally surrender into it, enjoy it. Yeah. So I mean, and there was a whole other series of things. I think Amma came on the scene as well. I received a hug from Amma. The same thing. Literally, I started having glimpses of unity consciousness after I received the hug from Amma. I didn't even know my own name after I received the hug from Amma. I remember sitting, after I got the hug, sitting on the stage next to her, and I remember opening my eyes and looking around, and I was like, a whole lot of Indian people. I was like, what am I doing in India? How did I get to India? I wasn't. It was just all of her helpers were Indian. I was convinced I had traveled to India. I sat there, didn't know my own name. I couldn't find
the brain
a reference.
Is just, everything is just empty. Like you can't find thoughts. Nothing is there, right? It's just empty, and you just have no idea what's going on. Yes.
Yeah, there was no reference of who I was. I was like, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I'm with. I was just sat there, just so happy. So then came a point where my bliss started to go down, where it started to disappear, and I was like, oh, maybe it's time to go back and get Shaktipat off Jan a second time. So I traveled to Copenhagen to see Jan. Had another really good intensive with Jan on the very last day, the Sunday. I remember saying to Jan, I said, look, Jan, I have to go early. I have to get a flight. And he called me up. He said, come up. And I sat down and he says, I'll give you Shakti Pat before you go. And I said, oh, go easy on me because I have to get a flight. So he gave me Shakti Pat, and then I left to say goodbye to everybody. And when I walked out the door into Copenhagen, and it was around Christmas time, it was maybe December, all the Christmas decorations were up. I walked out and it was like I was in a video game. It was like everything was just bright and sparkling. And I was like, oh, how am I going to get to the airport? I had to catch a train. And I was just like literally like walking around, walked down some steps, doors opened up. I walked onto this train. I was like, I didn't even know I was on the right train. All of a sudden the doors opened. I walked out. I'm in the airport. That's all I remember. I remember getting on the plane and getting home. I was fine. But then shortly after that experience, I had the full Kundalini awakening about 2 or 3 weeks afterwards.
Okay, so I mean, it's so great that you had all these profound experiences and everything, like was shown itself to you so clearly and so profound. I mean, that's very beautiful. Yeah. And the Kundalini awakening. So that was also a very profound experience. It went on for quite a while, right? And was very physical.
Yeah. So one evening I was just sat on my bed I was actually listening to classical piano music. Why I was listening to classical music, I have no idea, because I don't listen to classical piano music.
Your Kundalini likes classical piano.
My Kundalini liked it. And I was just lay on the bed and I started imagining the energy running up and down my spine. And then all of a sudden it just started, and it was like it became awake and it started moving by itself. And if you have an active Kundalini that's in your spine and it starts moving, I mean, it's the most incredible experience. It's like a little ball of electric bliss going up and down the center of the spine. I was running from the base of the spine all the way up, and it was hitting a blockage in between my shoulder blades. And I had known about the blockage. It had been there for quite some time. And it would hit there and it would feel like it was pushing, and then it would drop back down and come back up. And then all of a sudden, pop, the blockage popped. The Kundalini went past it. It went up into my neck. Then it got stuck in the neck. And it started going from just where the skull to the bottom part of the neck. It kind of got stuck in that place. And it kept almost like a ping pong ball going back. Ding, 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 ding. It started going like this, like bouncing, and then all of a sudden it just became a complete vibration in my neck. I was like, oh my God. And I mean, I was paralyzed. Lay on the bed, my back was arching. I had just this crazy energy going through my system, and it was trying to get through the third blockage. There's a knot just at where the skull is, and it couldn't get past this blockage. So all of a sudden the way I was experiencing it was that it couldn't get past the blockage at that time, but it didn't want to drop back down. It wanted to complete the journey in this experience. And what it did is, instead of going up, it went out, and it crawled up my face and the back of my skull, and it went up to the top of my head and drilled down into my brain. And then I had the experience of the crown opening. So literally it felt like the top of my skull was pulled like this, and it was like a white light started to expand in all directions. It felt like somebody had stretched my brain in all directions. And while all this was going on, it was like the most insane orgasmic sensation was just going up the center of the spine, and all this energy was going up into the brain. And I mean, I just sat there. I don't know, the whole experience lasted about 2.5 hours. And then eventually it got quiet, and I lay there and I was like, okay, let's turn the music off. And I was just able to manage to get out and turn the music off. And I was like, wow, I knew what had happened. Yeah.
Okay. So you knew that means you surrendered to it, and you had no fear in the system, you said,
no,
right?
There was no fear.
Yeah. Okay.
There was no fear. I didn't know if the Kundalini had completed its journey. I knew that I had the most amazing experience. I knew it was Kundalini, but I wasn't sure that was it. I was, I didn't understand the journey, the full journey at the time.
Yeah. But you were just surrendering to whatever happened, and you
Yes.
were basically fine with it. Okay, yeah.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, because like all the fear and the anxiety and everything was gone already. So yeah, really, really cool. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, you have such great experiences, Gareth. Really cool. Okay, and then how long after that you discovered that you can also like give Shaktipat or a transmission? And when, like, it was around the time when you started your group, right? The meditation group.
So a little bit after that, so a little bit after that, I went to see Tom Campbell. And while I was with Tom Campbell, I did 5 days with Tom Campbell in a place called Lumley Castle in Newcastle. And I had all these questions that I wanted to ask Tom about my Kundalini and Shaktipat and transmissions. And when I got there, all of a sudden my psychic abilities started to completely open up. And I would just close my eyes, I could ask questions. And one of the first questions that I wanted to ask Tom was my Kundalini complete? Was the journey complete? And all of a sudden, I started to see myself in a vision with these bottles of water. And I was walking around with bottles of water, putting them under my arms as I was collecting them. And I had 7. And I was like, what are the bottles? And then all of a sudden, the intelligence said, the bottles are representing your chakras. And I was like, oh, I've got 7 of them. And I was like, so the Kundalini has traveled through the 7 chakras. And it was like, yes. And I was like, so is it complete? And I said, no. And then all of a sudden it showed me, and I used to be a plumber. Okay. So the consciousness used to show me in the most easiest way that I'd understand. So all of a sudden it showed me this chrome pipe coming from the back of my head up. I was like, what is that? And it connected to this big sphere that looked like a luxury shower head. You know, you go into a nice shower, they have these beautiful shower heads. And it said that the Kundalini still has to get up to this 8th chakra that's above my head. And when the Kundalini reaches the 8th chakra, it will rain down, the Shakti will rain down on top of me. So that hadn't happened at that stage.
Okay. Yeah. And you were shown that. Okay.
I was shown that was what was to happen. Yeah.
And this happened soon after, or how long did it take?
So this happened a little bit after, a couple of months. I had started my group. I had started meditating. I had discovered that my state could be transmitted to other people when I meditate with them. What I was doing at that stage, I wasn't sure. I didn't want to call it Shakti. I was still very much. I didn't want to delude myself or other people. That was very much part of, you know, I wanted to stay very small. I didn't want to, you know, go around claiming that I was, you know, given special transmissions. So it was just a meditation. I would sit with a group of people, and the group just started to grow and grow and grow. The ability to give Shaktipat happened. I was initiated into the mantra that I speak about a lot, the Mahashadasi mantra. And I think on the 2nd day of me reciting the Mahashadasi mantra, I had a vision where Krishna appeared in front of me. And he was sat on the floor in the lotus position, and he was doing yoga asanas. He was stretching in front of me, and he was smiling. He had these big, beautiful, loving eyes. And I was like, oh my God, I'm looking at Krishna. And he's just beautiful smile. And then I went, oh my God, I'm looking at Krishna. And you know, all of a sudden, kind of like the shock that I was looking at Krishna pulled, you know, his vision started to fade. And then all of a sudden, all of this gold sparkles started to rain down around me. And it was like this most insane bliss. And that was the 8th chakra. That was the Kundalini reaching the 8th chakra. Yeah. And from that moment on, the Shakti just started flowing.
Okay, and you felt that it was then Shaktipat.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And before you said you started with your meditation group, so what made you start a meditation group? And it was online, right? Was it online, or was there one before?
Oh yeah. So I never wanted to do any. I never wanted to be a teacher. I didn't want to have a meditation group. I became involved with an individual who was really, really gifted at graphics and guided meditations. And he started making guided meditations, and he got me involved. And there was a Telegram group or a WhatsApp group at the time. and it built. He was doing these meditations, and they were really amazing. And then he would leave these spaces for me where he'd say, okay, at this space you do the transmission, and I'd start doing it. And then all of a sudden he just lost interest in the whole thing, and he said to me, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm going to do something else. So I was like, well, what do I do with this group? You know, and you're making the meditations, these amazing guided meditations. I said, I can't make them. I said, what do I do with them? So somebody just reached out and they were like, Gareth, why don't you just do them on Zoom and we'll all meet and just meditate in silence? So that's how that.
Before it wasn't on Zoom, it was live. Was it live?
Literally, there was a WhatsApp group, and there would be a guided meditation dropped into the WhatsApp group at a certain time at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday, and everyone would meditate at that time. And that's how it all started. And then all of a sudden, the guy who was making the meditations, he just said, I don't want to do this anymore. He decided he didn't want to do it. And I had maybe, I don't know, like 30 or 40 people in the group who wanted to continue meditating with me. So that's how the whole thing started. I never wanted to be a teacher. I never wanted to have a group. And I would just start. We just sit and we'd do a silent meditation. And then the group, a lot of the people fell away who were more drawn to the guided meditations. And then new people started coming in to the silent meditations. I think, the group has grown. I think, I don't know, just like sometimes now I see 65 people in the group. It's grown over the last number of years.
Yeah, so I think that was about the time when I joined your group, when you just started on Zoom, yeah? Yeah, and having the silent meditations and transmission, but you didn't call it Shakti, but then I remember it was just a transmission, just a
really transmission. Cool. There's like 10 people in the group.
Yeah. And then it started growing, and then and then you got interested, because I remember in attaining or going into unity consciousness, to experience unity consciousness. And then you found a transmission that could help you with that. So there's this special light transmission that helps you with raising your level of consciousness.
So the Shakti got me so far. It brought the Kundalini awakening on, but I was still convinced that I wasn't completely there yet. There was something missing. There was still a seeking energy in me, and I discovered this transmission. And I booked in, came across the book. I was like, okay, let's give this a go. Remember meeting with the guy, 15-minute transmission, and not feeling a whole lot from it. It was like, okay, very, very subtle energy, so different from receiving Shaktipat. It was like, okay, next couple of days, didn't really feel a whole lot. So I was like, okay, look, we'll just give it a go. Okay. I think my LOC was like 856 when I started. And I was convinced nothing was happening. I remember after the third session going, I think I'm probably wasting my time doing this. But then all of a sudden, the day after doing my third meditation, my third transmission, I was sat there meditating, and all of a sudden a vision opened up, and there was a coffee mug. And I straight away knew that the coffee mug was a representation of the container which was holding my consciousness separate from the collective consciousness. And I'm looking at the coffee mug, and then I see prison bars, and the coffee mug has been tapped on the prison bars. One tap, tap, and on the third tap, the coffee mug shattered, and then there was an explosion of light in my brain that went out in all directions. It felt like it went to the four corners of the universe. And I remember just being blinded, completely blinded by the light, just sat there, just couldn't see anything, just this white light, and then I just felt the light go out in all directions and then implode all the way back in. And then everything just went really still. Like, I mean, stillness that I've never experienced before. And I was like, oh, that's it. That was the shift into unity consciousness. I knew, I didn't need to ask anyone. I didn't need to go, can you tell me? I didn't need to go back to the guy. I was like, it's happened. I knew it had happened.
Yeah. I mean, with those shifts, right? When you have experiences like that, you just know.
Oh,
there's no mistake. Yeah.
yeah, there's no mistake. The
Yeah.
Kundalini rising into, I get people all the time coming to me and saying, I think my Kundalini went all the way up. I'm like, look, if you'll know, there's no thinking, there's no, can you check? You'll know when it goes up. The same, when I had my shift into unity consciousness, I didn't need to ask anyone. It was like, it happened. So yeah, that was that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so beautiful back then, because I remember then you sharing with us in the meditation group about your experience. And so we saw what happened to you. So, you were like the example walking already that path, and we could just follow you. So that was really, really cool. And then you discovered that you have the Shakti path on the one hand, and then you have the light transmission you can also give. So you can do both, awakening the Kundalini, helping the body to awaken, and then also to awaken consciousness, right?
Well,
yeah.
Well, okay. So so about 2 weeks after the unity shift, I remember lying in bed and waking up and feeling the very subtle vibrations that I used to have when I used to have the out of body experiences. And I remember going, wow, I haven't had them in a long time. And I was just lay there with these beautiful vibrations running up and down my body. And I had my eyes open looking around the room. And then I just closed my eyes. And as I closed my eyes, a new reality opened up. And there was a goddess stood above me with multiple arms, with, all these different weapons and gifts in different hands, flowers. And she was like, had a huge headdress with dripping with diamonds. And I looked up and I was like, oh, wow. And she said nothing. Absolutely. She just stood there over me. And then as soon as I came out of it, I knew, I was like, I can awaken people's consciousness. I can do that same transmission for people that I had just received. That was what was given to me. It was like a gift, and I knew. And that's when I started, doing it for other people.
Yeah, that's when you started offering it in the group. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's also very interesting that these Indian deities came up for you, right? Because it's not something you were really into. So they just showed up. Yeah.
All of them. I not all of them, because there's thousands of them, but I mean a lot of the main ones. So Durga, the goddess Durga, that was the goddess Durga that appeared over my bed. I had a vision of Kali, Krishna, Shiva appeared a number of times to me, and the goddess Lalita.
Yeah, very interesting. And then you started to offer this for people in your group, and quite successful. So a lot of people came, wanting this transmission, and you helped a lot of people to go into unity consciousness. And then you also, do you want to share a little bit about you becoming a guide? Because before it was more your journey and unfolding, and now you were able to share this with others. And maybe you want to talk a little bit about this.
Okay, so again, I had a very successful business. I had a number of retail stores, and I had a great e-commerce business, and I worked really, really hard on that. And I was convinced that was my gift in life, was doing what I was doing. I was very good at it. But I had a vision. I remember sitting on the sofa one Saturday evening. I remember just sat there and closing my eyes, and then having this download of information. And one of the downloads was that, and this was before the Kundalini. This was going back this was a little bit after the awakening in the gym. And I was shown that there was pools along my spine. They were shown like little water pools. And the intelligence said to me, these pools are not connecting because you're eating meat, and that the animal products that you're consuming are causing blockages for this energy to run on. So it told me that I needed to stop consuming meat to help these energies flow. And then it said to me that my real work, the work that I was doing, wasn't my true work. And I was like, well, okay, well, what is my true work? And it said that my true work was working with the energy in the spine. I was like, okay. And it had pretty much laid out my life for me. It was like, you know, this is what's going to happen. But I didn't know what Shaktipat was. I didn't know really what Kundalini was at the time. And the next day I stopped eating meat. So these were all little things that had probably contributed to me having the Kundalini awakening. You know, obviously it was the Shaktipat, but there was certain things that I had to do. And then all of a sudden my business started to fall apart during this spiritual awakening. You know, everything that was going on, the shops started to close. You know, my brother and my father worked for me. They lost their jobs. The whole thing crumbled. But I kind of watched it crumble, and I was like, yeah, I don't care. I just don't care. And I knew that something was opening up. I knew that I was going to step into a new role. And as soon as my business, literally like 2 weeks after my business closed, people just started coming to me asking me, could I do that transmission for them? Could I awaken consciousness in one-to-ones? So that's how I started. I put a website together. I offered that I could, you know, do personal one-to-one sessions with people. And over the next 6 months, that's what I started doing full time. Yeah.
Yeah. Very amazing, really. And okay. And then you started to offer also online events, right? Because the group grew. So you were you were posting on YouTube, like the meditations, and also you were sharing about your experience, which was so interesting. And thank you for doing that, because always when you had experience, you were sharing it afterwards. And the group was growing, more people were coming in, and then you also had the weekend retreats. So that was really good for everybody to sit in those energies for longer, right?
It was really good for me as well. It almost felt like the more that I did, the more beneficial it was for me as a vehicle for these energies. So by me sitting with a group of people online for 2 days over the weekend, it was enhancing my ability to hold more of these energies. The vessel was expanding each time, and it helped me. It refined my skills.
Yeah. Okay, then you did this for a while just online, because there wasn't any in-person.
Yeah, there was no in-person.
Yes, no possibilities. And then you also started doing in-person retreats, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And Shaktipat retreats.
Yeah.
At first, and then also, and then maybe we should talk about this first. The supramental force came in for you as well. Is there something you want to share before that came in as well? Or should we just continue with the supramental force, because that would be interesting?
Okay, I get to that. So just there is something. So all the time, I never wanted to do this. I never wanted to be a teacher. I never wanted to do retreats. And I remember Jan Esman was over doing a retreat, and he became sick on the last day of the retreat. And I remember getting a phone call, and the organizer panicking, going, Jan isn't well, he can't make it in. There's 35 people. Some of them have come from America. You're going to have to do it. And I really didn't want to do it. I so didn't want to do it, and been pushed into it and gone in. And basically she asked me, could I do it? And people were coming up, and even though I didn't want to do it, it showed me that I could do it. I was like, okay, giving people Shaktipat. I was looking around, people were shaking either side of me, and I was like, okay, wow, something is happening. So this was the universe pushing me into this role, even though I'm an introvert. I don't want to do, live events or give talks in front of audience, but consciousness just pushed me into it.
Yeah, so you would say, if this is something you're supposed to do, you will be shown or pushed into that direction.
100%, 100%. Yeah. And your skills won't be what you think they are, or they won't be my set of skills. It will develop for you in the way that's best for you. Exactly what happened to you, Eva. It's like yours just blossomed. Yeah,
different set of skills. Yes. Okay, then you did the retreats. Oh no, and first
Yeah.
First, you started to do the Shaktipat retreats, and then also the super metaphors started to come in. So do you want to share about that experience, because it was also profound?
Yes, so I came across, and this was before the unity shift. I came across a teacher called Satri. He's an American teacher, and I went to, and I mean, this is even going further back than Mother Mira and Amma. I remember coming across Satri's interview on Backup, and after watching his interview that night, I woke up in another lucid dream, and I felt like I was a servant stood in the hallway, the doorway of a stately home, and I was waiting patiently on the master to return. This is just what it felt. I was just like, wow, this is weird. And all of a sudden the doors opened and Satri walked in, and he walked over to me and he put his two thumbs on my forehead and pulled me in, and the two of us just exploded into this gold white light. And I remember the next day going, wow, I really need to go see this guy. So I think it was like 2 years later, he came to Ireland, and I went and I did a 4-day retreat with him. A silent retreat, wasn't able to talk. I went with a friend. There was 3 2-hour sittings every day, and it was very different. There was no Shakti. It felt just like a deep meditation. And when I left the retreat, an energy that felt very different to what I was used to started to come in through the top of my head and pull me into these very, very deep and profound states of samadhi. And I mean, I was going into samadhi 3 times a day for 90 minutes at each time. And this went on for maybe 3 or 4 months. And eventually, after the 3 or 4 months, I had the experience of the Brahman, where I was completely, like, my self was annihilated. I was completely sucked into the void. All my experience, my consciousness just evaporated. Terrifying. And then the following day, I had the experience where I merged with what I felt was that supreme being that looked out through my eyes. I merged with the impersonal version, the consciousness version. I was still very much awake and aware, unlike the previous night when I went into the Brahman. This time I was aware in this vast ocean of cyan blue intelligence. It was pure potential, pure love, pure possibility. And I was like, this is the most, and I was it. It was like I was there having the experience, but I was also it. I had merged with it, and it was like it was like the person, the Gareth back in reality, who was having spiritual experiences like self-realization and God consciousness. That was all laughable when I was merged with this consciousness, because this consciousness was just incredible. I never experienced the love and bliss like it. So that was the supreme being, Krishna consciousness.
Yeah. So, and was this in a meditation?
That was in a meditation.
In a meditation. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe 90 minutes, an hour. I hung out in that. Never wanted to come back. I was like, this is just the best thing ever.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Wow, beautiful. Okay, so again, a very profound experience that changed a lot.
Yeah.
So, and just for clarification, so you went into the Brahman before, then you had that experience, and how did the Brahman change after that experience? Did it change at all or not?
So I didn't know that was Brahman. So I'd had the experience of the Brahman and had no intellectual understanding of what Brahman consciousness was. So then I had the experience of unity consciousness. So my shift into Brahman consciousness came before unity. So so it wasn't until after unity consciousness I then had the experience of losing the I thought, and then a little bit later discovering that there was a state called Brahman and reading about it and researching it, and then me having an intellectual understanding. Oh, that happened to me 1.5 years ago. That's what that was. And as soon as I had the understanding and a context, like a framework of what had happened, then Brahman consciousness unfolded fully for me. I'd had the experience, but I didn't have the understanding.
Okay, so the experience was also in a meditation when you got
Yes.
sucked in. Okay.
Yes.
Just, yeah, for clarification.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was in a meditation and then you got sucked in. I had the same experience in Unity. But I didn't allow myself to get sucked in. I was so scared. Then yeah. So you can stop it. It's possible in a way, but I did. You didn't. Yeah. That was
yeah. So I speak to a lot of people who get very close, and the fear, because it is terrifying. Terrifying. It's like you're on the edge of the abyss, and it's like, if I go into this, I'm never coming back. It feels like you're going to be obliterated. Like somebody described it to me as being like erased. You're going to be like erased from
yeah. To me, it felt like I'm gonna be pulled out of my body and die. That's how it felt. So that's
and not just die.
Gone. Yeah,
you're like, gone. You've been erased.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So then you were that was before Unity. Then you had the Unity shift, and then do you just want to share the time frame? Like, how long were you in Unity? How long did you have that experience?
So Unity only lasted like really, really short for me, like maybe 2 weeks. And then I shifted into Sahaja Samadhi. Literally just woke up and I was in permanent Samadhi. It was like the need to meditate again just vanished. I was meditation. There was no trying to get to a state of meditation. The I thought had dissolved. My sense of self had dissolved, and that just,
so it all just dissolved by itself, naturally. Okay,
naturally, yeah, it just dissolved. It dissolved. It didn't go in the Unity shift. There was still an I-ness in the Unity, because it was like, oh, I am one with everything. But 2 weeks after the Unity shift, Sahaja Samadhi just evolved by itself spontaneously. And then I was shown the experience a little bit later, how the connection between the I thought and the intellect, the channel had been severed, and the I thought couldn't jump into the intellect anymore.
Okay, and that's also how you learned how to do it now for people, right? To erase erase the I thought, basically.
Well, help. It's not as easy as just
of course. It's not like just
I can't just say it, because people have the knack of going back in and reinstalling the I thought very quickly.
Yeah. It is true. But you can help.
I can help. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, then let's move forward into the Brahman. So do you just want to share a little bit about how it unfolded? So maybe how the shift into being the Brahman, how this happened for you?
Yeah, so I had the experience about 1.5 years beforehand, and then the intellectual understanding started to unfold. I was like, oh, that's what happened. And all of a sudden, it felt like my consciousness, my awareness was now partitioned here. There was something here in this reality, and it felt like my awareness was now also merged with the nothingness that's outside of reality. And I had this really, really strange sensation that when I would interact with somebody, so I would talk to them, they would be there. And then as soon as I would turn away, they would crumble. And the way it felt was that everything was just being projected onto this canvas, okay? And at the back of the canvas was just nothingness, pure void, and I was that void. So it felt that in behind what I was Brahman, was absolute no self void, and that void was basically the substratum on which all consciousness was being projected. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I had the same experience. How was the human love for you? Because for me, it was like I had to give away my human love. So it was like with that shift, it was gone with that shift, or like
Everything
how
went.
was it? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, all the love went.
Yeah.
My Shakti went. I noticed that my
Mhm.
Shakti disappeared. My transmission changed an awful lot during that time. The love disappeared. The warmness, the humanness disappeared. It
Mhm.
really did. I would be like, oh, my parents, I don't think about my parents. I would drop my kids to school in the morning. While I was with them, I was very loving. I was taking care of them. I'd say, okay, run into school. And then I'd turn away and my kids would just disappear. I didn't think about them. They didn't exist. I couldn't find them. There was no part of me where I could go, oh, I can think of my kids and worry about them. It just wasn't there.
Yeah, it's so interesting. The emotional connection to things is just gone. So you can maybe even think about the
even saying that it's difficult.
Yeah, even that is difficult, but you could. But
Yeah.
when you can, it's like it's empty. Like there's no emotional attachment there. Yeah. So it's
completely. And can I just say that this is where the problem with interacting with regular people who haven't had this experience, they expect you to have that connection that where you worry about people or you think about them, and when you have that experience of Brahman, you just don't have that. It's like nothing exists. People just collapse when you're not you don't go home and go, oh, I wonder how that person is. How's their life getting on? It just doesn't happen anymore. It's just like collapses.
Yeah,
everything collapses.
Exactly, and everything just gets so simple, so simplified. So everything is so simple, and all like this, the stuff around everything that was there before, like the thoughts, the emotions, and everything, is just gone, and then things are just so simple, and there's not much left. Yeah.
I mean, when they're there in front of you, you can be caring and loving and warm, but then when they leave, it's just like, oh, they leave. And what I noticed was like, oh, I don't need anyone. I don't. Oh, okay. So people aren't like, I don't get to hang out with people this weekend. Don't care. It's just like wherever I am, I'm happy. It's like I don't need people. I don't need activities to keep me entertained. It's just they don't exist when I'm not there. When I'm not with them, they just collapse.
Yeah, and also the desires fall away, right? You don't have as a normal human, you would sit somewhere and then have like desires for something else and think about something else, right? This totally falls away, so you don't have any desires. You're just where you're at, and that's it, right?
So the mind reaching out to the external world gets severed, and it wanting nice things or having preferences, like a piece of gold versus a piece of wood. It's like the gold, it means nothing more to me than a piece of wood. And it's like that with people. I don't have preferences with people. I mean, sure, there's certain people that you gravitate because you make your personalities, but like, even like I'm on vacation at the moment, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it's great, but it's no different from when I'm at home. Nothing has preference. Nothing is better. There's nobody is. Yeah.
Even though the weather is a lot nicer in Spain.
It's too hot at the moment.
Yeah.
I miss the rain in Ireland.
Okay, cool. So the next question would be, how did the shift into Brahman affect your work with people, or being the teacher? Did it affect at all? So maybe that's the question. Did it, and if yes, how?
I mean, it probably did to some extent, because I felt that humanness disappeared. So my ability to relate, to be relatable, for people to be able to relate to me, probably got a little bit affected by that shift. But I was very honest about it. I mean, I would sit there with 40 people, and a lot of people were really interested in what happened in the state of the Brahman. And I would just tell them the truth. I would explain, how it was. I think there was one time that it was just so dominant in my system that it felt I had fallen down a well. I always talk about it like being trapped down a well, and if I look up, that little light is my world, and people are up there and I'm down in the darkness. And I remember just like having tears just like in my eyes while I was talking to people about this, and thinking that I had just destroyed everything. I had destroyed the Gareth just was just completely obliterated. I'd gone so far that I had obliterated Gareth.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you had like a few days, there was a few days when you really had this experience that, I mean, nothing is left anyways, but even less than nothing was left, or
Yeah.
I don't remember, but like something like that. It was very, yeah, you were really sad about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But was it more that you just integrated this, or did something come back? Yeah.
So I don't think, I think it's very difficult to integrate this. It's like it's not that it integrates, it's that you're just there. You feel like you're floating off in outer space. Okay. You've the door of the spaceship opened, you're in the space costume, and you're just floating away, and you can't get back to your ship. That's how it felt. And I mean, sometimes I can still feel like that. It means like it never goes away. You become that Brahman, and part of you is that always. But what happened was then it felt like a re-emergence back into creation. And as I was coming back into creation, there was something I called the pure divinity. There was like I was coming back in, and now all of a sudden there was this light, there was this liquid, crystalline, silvery light coming down through the top of my head, filling me over and over every day, every hour. And this is what I call pure divinity. And I mean, this was going on in my system, and I talk about it. I have a video where I call it God realization. I think there's 3 parts to it, where I just knew something was happening. I was sat in I have a caravan. I was sat at the caravan one evening, and I seen in the clouds a picture of Vishnu, and then all of a sudden my body started getting really strange, and I was like, oh, something doesn't feel right here. And I was like, I knew something really big was happening, and I had the kids with me. And I think it held off, because the next day then it started when I was back I was sat on the sofa, and all of a sudden I seen myself having what looked like convulsions. I was going into convulsions. I was having like like kriyas and shaking. And I said, oh, I better get up to my bed. So I got up onto my bed. As soon as I got onto the bed, my body just started shaking. It was just like uncontrollable. I couldn't control it. And I had this energy coming in through the top of my head. And it went on the entire night. Couldn't stop it, couldn't control it. I just stayed in bed. The next day, I closed my eyes. I was just like connected to everything. I was just all of these visions. I had just incredible bliss. Amazing, yeah.
And what do you think happened then? So the pure divinity was just filling up the system, the divine energy. Okay.
The divine forces were flowing into my. I had basically gone out, come one with the Brahman, and re-entered, and I came back in with gifts.
Yeah, so you would also call it Para Brahman, right? The pure divinity, that's the same. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So and that's when the supramental force came into your, when you started to give it, right? When you were able to.
It started coming a little bit before that, but the real flow.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. Okay, and this is also something you're sharing now with your group and with people. The supramental force.
Yes. The supramental force. Yeah, it comes in. People will meditate in the group, and they'll be introduced to that energy, and that energy will just start to come into their systems at random time. They don't even have to be in meditation with me. It just starts pouring into people once they get introduced.
Pulling them into meditation. So everything you basically did or experienced on your path unfolded for you to give as well. So the Shaktipat, the light transmission, and the supramental force. And then the mother force as well.
Well, just to go back, so just before the mother force, I was shown a series of past lives just as all this pure divinity was going on. And in my last 3 lives, I had reached a certain level of consciousness where I was awake in at least 2 of them. The third, first one, I'm not so sure. I had all this incredible love. I wrote about it in my book, but in my most previous life, I was a devotee of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, and I lived in the ashram. And as I was being shown this life, they told me that I was leaving India. I was actually a Dutch monk, and I had found myself in Sri Aurobindo's ashram, and they told me that I was leaving and that I was going to come to the West in my next life to bring in the supramental force.
I'm just smiling because I remember at one retreat we were looking at photos of people of Sri Aurobindo's and Mother's ashram, and we were looking if one of them was you. We couldn't find you though, but we found out that you were Dutch, not French. So we found out that. So really cool. Okay. And so it was your destiny basically to bring this force to the West and to help us people here in the West on our spiritual journey. Really cool.
So the mother force then, so I spoke about the supreme being, okay, and the supreme being basically being the one consciousness that's in all of us, okay. So the mother force, I had an experience where the Divine Mother came into my system, and I had the realization of what she was. I became her. She came down, she entered every cell of my system. And again, it's not that you're sitting there having a vision of what the Divine Mother is, or she's external to you. It's that you actually become her, and she starts to experience herself through your physical form. And it was like, I could feel what she was and how she was able to manifest all of creation, all of the realities, all of the galaxies and universes. And each one, as it was being birthed into creation, it was like an explosion of bliss in the cells of my body. And they were just going off, and all these beautiful explosions. And I mean, it was the most incredible thing I've ever experienced. And basically, the supreme being splits himself. He's like the potential, he's consciousness, and she's the one who's manifesting everything that he gets to experience. So she's the force. She's the real, like, what I would say, she's like the dynamite. She's like the destructive force, the creative force. She's love, she's bliss, and the supreme being is more the enjoyer of what she has to offer. So I got to experience the supreme being merging with the supreme being, and then I got to experience the Divine Mother. I got to experience, or she got to experience herself through my physical form.
Yeah. So you feel that you are her in your form.
Yes.
Yeah, and this was also a very long and profound experience, right? It went on for a few hours. Or for quite a while. And then you brought back, or you were able to or your force changed, let's say it like that. The force, the transmission you gave started to change because of that experience, right?
So the next day, or the next few days, I was different. It was like she had left. I had this profound experience with the Divine Mother. I had seen that she was so incredibly powerful, like beyond anything you could imagine. And when it closed down, she had left something in my heart. My heart was different. I could feel her presence in my heart. And then my transmission started to change. It was like all of these transmissions, the Shakti, the supramental force, the light, they all started to merge into one really amazing transmission. And I just gave it the name, the Mother Force, because I could feel her behind the transmission. She was in it.
Yeah, very beautiful. Okay. So that was the last more profound experience, right? So more to come in the future, but this one was we'll see.
We'll see.
Of course. So I think You shared a lot now about your spiritual journey. Is there something you want to add? Because I think we should come to an end.
Yeah, definitely. No, I don't think I mean, okay, again, I spoke about an awful lot in this. And if you want to like really get into it, people can find my book, Waking Up from the Dream. It's on all the Amazon.
So it's here. Wait, oh, it's the other way. It's the wrong way, but still.
No, it's fine. I can see it perfect.
Yeah. So that's the book. Yeah, I mean, of course, in like a podcast, you can only share so much, right? I mean, a lot is not shared, of course, but you also have great YouTube videos where you share a lot. Although also the experiences you had right after you had the experiences, and also just content about like the different states of consciousness we were talking about, also the Kundalini, the Shaktipat, light transmission, supermental force, and all of that. So it's all available for everybody who's interested.
Yeah, I mean, I have two amazing videos called The Mother Force Explained on my YouTube channel. Yeah, and they talk all about what happened with the Divine Mother.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I think, sadly, but we should end this.
Yeah, you're basically telling me to shut up now, Eva.
Oh, that was such a great interview, and you were sharing also things I didn't know, and I found it so interesting. And thank you so much, Gareth. It was great.
Thank you so much, Eva. Thank you, and you did an amazing interview. I have to say, really great.
Great. I'm glad we enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for everybody who was listening to all of this. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast, for listening to this interview. And do you want to share a little bit about where people can find it? So you have your website.
Sure. So my website is truespiritualawakening.eu. My book is Waking Up from the Dream. That's on all the Amazon platforms. My Instagram is The Mother Force, and then my YouTube channel, True Spiritual Awakening. All my videos are up there, and my meditations. Yeah. And
you have your 2 free silent meditation on YouTube on Tuesday and Friday at 9 p.m.
Yeah, 9 p.m. UK time.
Time. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you,
Eva,
Gareth.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That was amazing. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.